Good morning, everybody. I'm Erin Gallagher, and I'm the Chair of Acquisitions and Collection Services at the University of Florida. And I'm here very, very pleased to be moderating this session of fabulous presenters for the Stopwatch Session. And if you're not sure how Stopwatch Sessions work, you're going to see it in action, which is that each of our presenters has 6 really fast minutes to present on a topic or something that I know you're going to be interested in hearing more about. So my job is to be the dad with the stopwatch in the room. So I'm going to be sitting here with a stopwatch at 6 minutes. When they have 1 minute left, I will notify them. And then at 6 minutes, we're cutting off. And I don't have like a hook to pull anybody off the stage or anything. And I told them I'm a soft-hearted person, so I won't be mean about it. But I really am going to try to clip us along and keep us in that 6 minute framework, because that's how the stopwatch sessions are supposed to work. And then at the end, we will have time for Q&A, so I'll ask everybody to, come up and participate in that. So please get your questions ready for our presenters. Also, I do have to share one change to the program, which is that the topic, Unearthing the Unpublished Gray Literature in Biodiversity Research from Central Africa, unfortunately, one of the presenters couldn't make it. So that one's not going to be a part of our offering today, but that doesn't mean I'm still not going to try to keep everybody within that 6 minutes. All right. Okay. Thanks a lot. Enjoy. We'll kick it off with our first presenter.
Okay. Good. Hi, everybody. I'm Katie DiVittorio. I work at the Auraria Library in Denver, Colorado. My library is unique in that it serves 3 institutions with 1 physical library. We serve University of Colorado, Denver, Metropolitan State University of Denver, and Community College of Denver. And today I'll be sharing a few DEI projects I've led my department through and the approaches I take. So one of the first projects I want to talk about is the Vendor Ethics Task Force. So at the time of this project, University of Colorado, Denver was aiming to become the first equity surveying institution in the nation. For this project, we reviewed the values of the institutions we serve, the values of our library, and the profession in order to develop metrics to assess the vendors we work with. So we use these profiles today to assist in renewal and new subscription and purchase decisions. And all 3 institutions my library serve, back when we first started this in 2018, visibly valued and supported DEI. So this is an example of one profile. And the metrics we look at, this is a real vendor, I took their name off though. When we started this, everybody in my library was super excited about this project, and even university procurement wanted to hop on board with it. And I'll talk about one of the metrics, data privacy. So for data privacy, for each vendor, we review their privacy policy and also that of their parent company. The language we want is clear and user-centric. For example, data collected about a user should be minimal, only what is really necessary to provide the service. However, we often see policies that allow a lot more data to be collected, to be shared with third parties, and allows the company to keep the data forever. So the next project I led my department through was the Anti-Racist Library Collection Building Workbook. This was created by one of my sister campuses, the University of Colorado Boulder. So for my department, we took a month or more to work through each section. There's various sections through the workbook. When we got to the cataloging and classification section, I invited there's another department at my library that's called Discovery Systems and Metadata, and we invited them to come work through that section with us, which was great because by inviting them, we had a better conversation, and we had another task force that we created. So we created the Classification Contextualization Task Force. We call it CCTF. And with that one, they created language. So we have signage now in our stacks, and we have a website where we talk about, we try to contextualize how problematic LCC is. So we know we can't change what the subject terms are, what the classifications are, but we can contextualize it so our patrons can see, this, where the history is coming from, and that we don't necessarily agree with the terms that are used. For this project, I also organized a visit to CU Boulder, and we met with the creators of this workbook and worked through sections. Okay, 2025, DEI is going away. It's vanishing. The terms I'm seeing more are access and community. So I personally am not taking the approach of pre-complying, and I'm not taking away DEI from the work that I'm doing or that my department is doing. No one's asked me to do that. Not going to do it. This year, my department, we're working through a workbook called Disability Justice. It's an audit tool. Yeah. So some of the approaches I take to these projects, I try to tie all of them to the institution that my library serves. If the language is changing, if it's more access and community now, we'll adjust. I try to create buy-in. I ask for suggestions from the people in my department. For this year, we had like 6 different potential workbooks, and we voted. And that's how we decided on disability justice. Normalize the work. It's part of the department meetings. It's part of the professional plans. I celebrate the work that's happening. Bring in colleagues. They can do so much. Like create more task forces, more work, but it's really important work. And then find people that are super excited because they are there. They're in your library. They are within libraries near you, if not within your library. Just some references for those that want to check out the classification contextualization task force, the workbook. I wrote a paper with one of my colleagues about the VET templates. And then if you want to look at the disability justice, another tool. That's it.
Good morning, everyone. We are presenting on mapping a path to diversifying collections, a tiered framework linking theory and practice. I am Dr. Corey Laverty, Art, Cultural Studies, Drama, and Music Librarian at Queen's University in Ontario, Canada.
And I'm Sylvia Anderchuk, Head Humanities, Business, and Social Sciences Librarian and Librarian for Gender Studies, Philosophy, and Sociology. Our context is that Queen's University has a colonial past, and our library, dating back over 100 years, has a colonial foundation. This timeline shows critical reports that give us a mandate to prioritize indigenization, equity, diversity, accessibility, and anti-racism in our collections work.
This slide shows the parameters of diversity that we identified as being critical to a library collection of diverse voices. Diversity can be categorized in many ways, but given our liaison roles in specific disciplines and the history of our colonial library, we wanted to focus on several areas. First, gender and sexual orientation. We want women and LGBTQ2S+ authors and or content represented in our collections. In terms of underrepresented voices, we currently focus on Black authors. Given our Canadian context, we prioritize Indigenous knowledges written by and about First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. Canadian content reflecting life, histories, and communities across the country is essential. We search for works written by or about disability and works that reflect social issues as they intersect and surface in different disciplines. We seek authors who communicate national perspectives and authors who give voice to global ideas outside North America. Over a decade ago, Lorcan Dempsey coined the term, the facilitated collection, to describe our library collections based on how we access them. Today, we operate within resource networks and no longer need to rely solely on an independently owned collection. Instead, we facilitate how materials are accessed by our communities. Dempsey described 3 tiers of access. He talked about local materials, collaborative materials, and external materials. Now, from that, the facilitated collection envisages how we provide access within a network. We drew on this tiered network to create a model for how we acquire materials. A diverse collection needs to be built systematically, and this model is helping us operationalize our diversity goals.
This slide illustrates the 6 tiers for collection development. It is important to note that the vast majority of our collection is hand-selected by librarians. We don't rely on approval plans for all but a few cases with specific university presses. At the local tier, we seek outputs from local authors and groups, an example of which is the library's collaboration with the campus student government to showcase marginalized voices through a student-selected fiction collection. Curated lists include lists of award winners and lists such as the annual Choice Review's outstanding academic titles. Vendors, publishers, and distributors include small and independent publishers and distributors, as well as new title notification slips from our book jobbers. Open education resources includes open access journals, books, primary sources, conference proceedings, and videos. Gray literature includes outputs from external institutions and organizations. And collective collecting includes shared ownership and shared access. These materials are all discoverable through our library discovery system, our catalog, and embedded in LibGuides.
This slide illustrates how the tiered framework can be applied to the acquisition of resources for art history and fine art. I start by identifying local art-related catalogs in print and online. Our local gallery produces both. I check curated lists that capture works on artists and artistic creation, such as our CBC and the Getty. Apart from vendor slips, I order books directly from the Indigenous distributor Good Minds and presses that specialize in Canadian art. I look for open educational resources that complement courses, such as works produced by the Art Canada Online Book Project. I seek gray literature that embellishes Canadian artist profiles and practices, such as those documented at the Inuit Art Foundation. The library and campus art gallery are part of an exhibition exchange across Canada, and our gallery also donated an African art collection, which is made available to academic libraries across Ontario.
We also need to think about diversity parameters in our deselection processes. We want to include diverse voices to broaden the curriculum, including rare resources, as well as diverse voices as they are represented over time. For example, when looking at deselection in the area of philosophy, works by female philosophers stay in our collection regardless of use because female philosophers have been underrepresented. For reasons such as this, we need to go beyond publication date and usage statistics in assessing our collection, recognizing historical and contemporary biases in publishing and citation practices. And there's some references for you all. Thank you very much.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Menzel. I'm the Collections Management and Strategies Librarian at Duke University's J. Michael Goodson Law Library, or the Law Library. And a co-author for this talk is a previous intern of ours, Abby Van Vliet. And I'm going to be talking about systems-aware librarians and supporting that development through collections work in internship design. Okay, so about 2 years ago, I took over the management of our internship program and intern projects. And before that, the program was run by our reference librarians. And interns who usually had JDs worked mainly on reference and research projects. So when I took the project over, stepped into the role, the focus kind of naturally shifted toward collections and collections adjacent work. And at first, that was mostly a practical change around bandwidth and workload and kind of just staffing, but it's turned out to be a real opportunity, which is why I wanted to talk about it. So we found that collections projects have become really great training tools for showing our interns how the library fits together as an ecosystem. So how decisions about materials, systems, workflows connect across departments. Most of our interns arrive with interests in public service roles, so reference, instruction, outreach, also archives. And they don't come in with specifically collections or technical services end goals, but they also generally don't know yet they don't yet have great familiarity with all the parts of a library. So collections work kind of ends up being their beginner's guide to the orchestra, and it shows how every part of the library contributes to these shared goals that they came in with around fostering a scholarly inclusive environment, building research skills, and how these different departments contribute to these shared goals like connecting people with resources, supporting research. So the collection development life cycles kind of inherently cross-departmental, and especially at our library, which is we have about 20 folks there. So part of this is that it is a smaller library space and we work really collaboratively. And so for us, the collection development life cycle is extremely cross-departmental. And the full process of selecting what we acquire, how we describe it, how we provide access, how we preserve it, all of that is moving information between teams and thinking a lot about connecting points and handoff points in the library. So when interns work on a collections project, they get to see librarianship not as a set of silos, but rather as an ecosystem of connected decisions that shape user experience. So here are a few specific examples of what I'm talking about when I talk about collections. So one intern interested in a reference created a collections plan for updating our non-English legal dictionary collection. So based on user stories, access points, and thinking about acquisition options. Another one interested in outreach developed an accessibility assessment for our e-resources and explored how accessibility results gathered at the acquisition stage can actually be then succinctly communicated with the public services teams, and how collections analysis can then be actually a form of outreach and service. And then one of our interns, who's my co-author, Abby, was particularly interested in archives, and she worked on reviewing our microfiche collection for online duplication. So that sounds straightforward maybe initially, but it meant learning how to search databases like Hide Online. So she got a lot of research skills. She was running and interpreting reports in Alma, so collections analysis, checking government document retention rules, and probably most significantly, and to her big credit, the most challenging, talking and coordinating across departments like cataloging, acquisitions, and various staff to kind of piece together the collection's history. And so she and I called it detective work, where she'd compare what the catalog said to what the physical collection actually was, and then the gaps in between, and then sort of put together this history of why decisions had been made, where we were within different processes. And her feedback on that was that working across so many different departments really helped her see how people were working on similar goals from different angles. She got more comfortable working with the ILS, and I think just the confidence to be able to piece together a history and feel like, okay, my not knowing is not that's just kind of a state of navigating. That is part of the process. We also have professional development sessions to kind of help folks piece together the experience they're getting with future roles that they want, and kind of building that link. So here's a link to those materials if you're interested. And just ultimately, I want to say why this matters. And part of this is, yes, it's practical. We have the interns there, they have these interests, we have this work needs to be done, and we needed a bridge. But I also really believe that the systems perspective introduction to collection development is really valuable and really needed, because we really need public services librarians who understand the complexities of developing and sustaining a collection, and then also the handoffs between departments that make this happen. And we need technical services librarians who think about metadata collection development systems as acts of care and access. So collections projects have turned out to be a really good way to begin making that bridge. So thank you.